Hey, happy Halloween, everybody. I got a spooky show for you tonight, but real stuff. I mean, you've been doing a lot of, scary costume Halloween all night, and this is the real thing, because true crime is what people dress up as. But tonight, I'm still working on the Melodee story. I mean, where is Melodee Buzzard? Because if you were watching last night, we had all this breaking news of police showing up at her house, taking her away in a van. And then as it turns out, they took away a lot of other things too. They took away pieces of her carpet and her drywall and pieces of the concrete out of her garage. That according to the neighbors. So what does it mean? What does this mean? They brought her back in the wee hours of the morning, long after we were off the air last night. They took her out in these pictures, and then when it was dark, they brought her back. So what was she doing when she went to the alternate location, and why was she allowed to come home? Because if they'd found a bunch of stuff in that house, wouldn't they have kept her? I've got the top FBI person that I always turn to when I want to know what they're doing, because she used to work for the FBI. So that's coming up in just a moment. Also, just when you think you've probably got the pieces of the puzzle together in Bryan Kohberger, something else drops. And tonight, something else dropped. It is the interview that police got with the DoorDash delivery driver. Not the one you think you've seen. There's a tape that came around this summer. This is the actual interview when they brought her in and said, "You're the person who dropped off the food at 4 a.m. Dear God, what did you see?" You won't believe what she saw, because she saw a lot, and she saw Bryan Kohberger. She's got a very vivid description of his stare and his intensity. She'll tell you where she saw him, and I will tell you, according to the timeline, she could have been victim number 5 so easily. That's coming up in just a moment. I don't know if you saw this on your feed, but if you didn't, wait for it. It's coming. This chase, and I'm big into police chases. I watch them all the time. I love it. I love On Patrol Live. I love all that stuff. This was not that. This was a chase I'd never seen before, because it's a chase where that cruiser is chasing down a guy on foot.
Yo, hell no, yo.
Oh, hell no. It looks like he's trying to hit him. It's crazy. Okay, I am going to play all of this for you, because this is just the beginning. Yeah, this is just the beginning of this tape. It goes on, and it does a lot more, and it goes all through that neighborhood, and then it ends up in nothing good. And then after there's smoke and dust and everything everywhere, there's like big trouble for the cop. I'm going to go through all of that with you in just a moment. Let me start here, though. I have no idea what Halloween night is like in Lompoc, California. That's all, up the ways up from Santa Barbara up the coast. But I can guess, and I'm damn sure I know that 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard ought to be a part of it tonight. She ought to be hitting the neighborhood streets with a gaggle of her good friends, wearing costumes they picked out like in July, collecting tons of free candy that's going to give them all cavities and tummy aches, and they're all going to love it, right? It's a 4th grader's night to remember, but Melodee is having none of that. Or if she is, she's having it far from home, and police would really like to know where. As you know, if you followed our coverage, the little girl's whereabouts can't be verified beyond this, right? The outbound leg of a cross-country road trip taken with her mom. That happened earlier this month. She was seen here on this surveillance video at a car rental office near the family's home. This was on October the 7th. The Daily Mail newspaper says she was also seen on security cameras at pit stops en route to Nebraska. But police say when Ashleigh Buzzard returned home on October 10th, her daughter was no longer with her. We don't know how police know that, but they say it's a fact. Nor do we know why Ashleigh Buzzard, her mother, drove to Nebraska, nor what became of Melodee between there and California. We do know, though, that Mom is apparently back home tonight, and I am curious to know whether she's handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters right now, and what's running through her mind if she is. This time last night, that mom, Ashleigh Buzzard, was out, and not by choice, because police had come to collect her, and they moved her to what they called a quote-unquote alternate location, while they scoured her house for evidence. And they brought her back many hours later. According to a neighbor, the agents stayed inside the house with her for another 30 minutes and then went on their way. The house by then, however, was vastly different. That neighbor tells us exclusively that the agents took out 2 large bags of evidence, yellow bags, also removed carpet and drywall, and it appears they tore up the concrete in the garage. And that wasn't the only search warrant executed last night. The feds also searched a storage locker and the rental car that Melodee was last seen in. Ashleigh Buzzard, needless to say, is stonewalling. Not just the investigators, but Melodee's relatives on her dad's side. Her dad died back in 2016 when she was just a baby. But worse than that, Ashleigh now seems determined to sabotage the search for her own daughter. Earlier this week, she was caught on camera ripping down her own daughter's missing posters from the front yard. Look at this video. This makes 0 sense. My next guest knows all about what the FBI does when a child goes missing and agents start flipping a house. Jennifer Coffendorfer is a retired FBI agent and good friend of the show. Okay, Jennifer, so much ground to cover with you tonight. What's your reaction to the evidence that we know of? I mean, again, this is a neighbor witnessing this, but yellow evidence bags coming out, concrete being torn up in the garage, and drywall and carpet being ripped out of the house.
Well, it's really critical, Ashleigh, to understanding what they found in there. First of all, if they took those yellow bags, those are typically our larger yellow plastic bags, that tells me there was nothing biodegradable in there. You would never put biodegradable items in plastic bags. We're talking about electronics. Perhaps you replaced the electronics that they would have taken on the October 15th search warrant. Tools, possibly, papers, photos, indicia of that crime. That drywall and that concrete, wow, carpet, anything along those lines, you're looking at possibly something that would have been reminiscent of a biological items that would be in there, such as blood, DNA, hair.
Yeah, that's distressing whenever you hear. And I think Gacy, when I see they're tearing up the garage concrete, because that's what they did in Gacy's case, God forbid. But I feel like they would have known something, and she would not have been allowed to return to the house if they got something right away. What do you make of that? The fact that she was back by about 1 o'clock in the morning local time.
Well, first of all, I agree with you. They had in that search warrant the probable cause not only to show that the item was there, but it was there when they were going to go in there. So in other words, you can't use stale. We call it stale probable cause. It has to be up to date. So their investigation gave them new information that allowed them to go back in, go to that storage locker, go to that rental car. The fact that they took her out in the first place, Ashleigh, I'm going to tell you, it's unusual. Usually when we serve search warrants, we allow the people to be around in that area and watch. The fact that they actually took her and she agreed to go, to me, is very important. It showed that they believe she would be unsafe to be around while they were doing this work.
Whoa, wait, pull on that thread a little more. What does that mean? Unsafe to be around? You can't put her in the back of a cop car and see her reaction and record it all on camera?
Well, you could, but again, this is somebody that is your star witness as to where Melodee would be. So if you're a good agent, you hopefully are trying to warm up to her, establish some sort of credibility with her, take her to perhaps a hotel or other location where she would be comfortable. And from all accounts, Ashleigh, she is not in her right mind. So you definitely don't want somebody like that going off being in a police car for hours.
So do you think they would have told her, we're about to flip your house and carve bits and pieces out of the carpet and the wall and the concrete? Or do you think they would have said, come with us for a chat, and said nothing else, and then she would have come home to see what had happened when she went for that chat?
I think that they told her during the chat that they were going to tear her house up, if you will, that they're going to leave no stone unturned. And you really can't. Look in the BTK case. Remember those items that were found later, many years later, that were his souvenirs of the crime? Not that this is a serial killer, but imagine if she did harm Melodee, she might want to keep trinkets or something around hidden that would remind her of Melodee.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the electronics. You touched on it briefly at the top, but I'm always fascinated about, the trail that the electronics leave these days is just like chef's kiss for investigators, right? Generally speaking, you're not talking about criminals who know much about what they're doing, even if they've seen forensic files. I would think if she was planning to do anything with Melodee, and I'm going to talk about Nebraska and why Nebraska is important in a minute, it would have been planned, and more than likely planned on a phone or a laptop. So I'm assuming that's what they're after.
Right. They're looking for those Google searches. They're also looking for maps. They're looking for what she might have planned out in terms of what roads she would have taken. Also, the destination would be important. So they're going to be looking at all of that. There's going to be so many clues if there are electronics there.
Okay, and then the next thing is the rental car. The storage locker was being searched and the rental car was being searched. But I mean, Jennifer, you and I have rented a million cars, right? You drive it into the lineup and they're cleaning it almost before you get out of it. It's pretty hard to get forensic evidence out of a rental car days and days after that car's been returned.
Well, you know what? This isn't a Brian Koberger cleaning crew here, Ashlee, that he had the car 5 weeks and scrubbed it. Typically, if there really is anything in that car, and remember, it wouldn't be unusual for her hair to be there, but what could be unusual would be blood to be there. And if there's anything like that they find, it's going to be gold.
And I guess they don't clean the trunk quite like they clean the inside cabin where people are usually sitting. So that's pretty fascinating. And I hate that we're even talking about the trunk because I still hope we're talking about a little girl who was in a passenger seat and got out somewhere, which brings me to Nebraska. I know that, with all your FBI background, you know that Nebraska is a hotbed for sex trafficking. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. The crossroads of the interstates allow you to get in and out of that state easily over state lines. The laws are considered by traffickers to be more lax. Lots of big sporting events, which means lots of, people looking for sex and needing a good pool of sex workers. And then a real vulnerable population, a lot of migrants and people who are underrepresented in the law. So, easy targets for sex crimes. This is what I feared when I heard the road trip went to Nebraska. I'm assuming your brain went there too.
It did, but I balanced that with her actions. It seems like she wants to keep complete control of Melodee, right? It seems like in her world, she was fearful that they might take her away. And actually, she might not be that far off base with what was going on with CPS and family and so on and so forth, knowing she was in a bad environment, the school and so forth. And it just seems to me that she's so controlling that she either A, left her with somebody that she knows and only she knows, maybe somebody she did contact on the internet, or the unthinkable Ashlee.
Yeah, well, there's two unthinkables in my books, and that is number one, she took her to Nebraska, allegation here, my thinking only, for sex trafficking, selling her daughter, or murder. I mean, this is what we do on this show. These are the worst case scenarios that we work in this every day, so it's not out of the ordinary. What do you make of her tearing up the missing posters? Like, that to me was just bonkers.
Well, first of all, it's in line with what we've heard about her, the bonkers part. And secondarily, to me, that's all about this control. She doesn't want anyone saying anything about her daughter, but her complete and solid control of the narrative and what's happening. And she doesn't want those posters up because she doesn't want anybody helping to find Melodee, like you're doing on your show.
Yeah, but wow, how obvious are you when you're doing that right out in front of all your neighbors and one just has to peek out the window and see that scene, that went on for like a couple of minutes too. She was collecting and gathering and then jamming them all together and walking them inside. One last question I'm trying to get my head around. How do we know, and how would investigators know, and I got about 30 seconds left, how would they know that she didn't return with Melodee? How do they know she didn't drop Melodee off at the house and then go return the rental car?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, that rental car return could have been important. In other words, was there a suitcase in there, was not, was she or not? And I understand your point about returning first and then returning the rental car, but there would have been those cameras that would have been in that neighborhood, ring cameras, the road cameras, I think that would have detected that. Secondarily, Ashlee, the number one thing I thought of is she actually might have said something to somebody. This is a manipulative, she is looking to make sure she hides her story and to tell somebody, oh, you know, my daughter isn't with me because I left her in Nebraska. I could see her dropping that little hint to somebody, neighbors, or possibly somebody at the rental car company.
So many different scenarios. I feel like a shoe is going to drop soon, though, now that they really bore down and did those investigative searches. Jennifer, you're going to have to drop by again once we get another piece of information to help us sort of sort through it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, she lived with him for decades and only today won the right to know his name and where he's now living. Kimberly Sullivan is the Connecticut woman accused of holding her 32-year-old stepson captive in an upstairs room and starving him down to 68 pounds. Today, she won a small victory in court. A judge agreed to reveal to her her stepson's new name and address. The question is, how's that going to help her fight almost a half dozen serious charges that she's facing? Her lawyer is live with me next. If anybody deserves to be left alone to live in peace and private anonymity as long as he wants, it's the Connecticut man who was rescued back in February from a house fire that he says he set as a last-ditch, all-or-nothing means of escaping this house. You probably remember what he and Connecticut prosecutors and firefighters say he was escaping: 21 years of forced confinement in an upper room, during which he allegedly was starved to the point where at age 32, at the time of the fire, he weighed less than 70 pounds. That's the same as an average 10-year-old child weighs. The man's alleged tormentor was his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, who is now charged with unlawful restraint, kidnapping, and other charges, and who today was in court to demand some information about her alleged victim. Specifically, she wants to know his new name and his new identity and address. And in court papers, he's merely referred to as the letter S. Stepmother also wants to know where he's been living, and she wants the medical records, which by law, you probably know under HIPAA, are private. But Kimberly Sullivan played the Sixth Amendment card, our constitutional right to face your accuser. And guess what? She won. The defense was granted limited access to the stepson's new, and we're only assuming better life, and the rest of us are getting a disturbing peek at his old life. The New York Post acquired a trove of never-before-seen photos of Kimberly Sullivan's home after, and we want to be clear, this is after the fire. That's the stairway, presumably leading up to where S says he was forced to live and only let out to do chores. You can see that the drywall has been ripped out of the house, again, presumably because of the fire. There's also the kitchen, and this is a tough picture because it's where first responders say they found a 68-pound man in a fetal position under a table. But it does get more strange. There's a woman's face painted on a bright pink wall in the living room, and there's also a doll that is hanging from a swing from the ceiling. In the basement, there's an old trunk that is full of debris and 2 sets of washer and dryers, typical looking old house basement. Kimberly Sullivan's attorney says she never mistreated her stepson and wants no more involvement in his current life other than what any criminal defendant is entitled to. And Yanis Kolitis is back with me live on this program tonight. Good to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for coming back. So I guess that could be considered quite a win today, that the judge has granted you name, address, medical information. But I said it earlier, I'll say it again. How is any of that going to help you in your defense of these extraordinarily serious charges she's facing?
So Thank you for having me back on. And what's important to be clear here is we were not asking for anything out of the ordinary. We were not asking for anything crazy. It was the state that was asking to withhold certain information from the defense. Every defendant is entitled to know the name and address of not only their accuser, but the witnesses. So we were asking for what we were entitled to receive. It was the state that was seeking to withhold information. What happened today was the judge applied the law appropriately. We briefed this issue extensively. We identified a number of issues, constitutional primarily, and the court simply applied the law. This was the right thing to happen. So this paves the way for us to finally get these medical records that we've been waiting months for.
So medical records, I think I can understand because and I can only call him S, as I understand it. You may be privy to this man's name, the stepson's name. You're also under threat, by the court to not release it to me or anybody else. It's just for your use and your client's use only. I get it. But, other than sharing it, I'm trying to figure out what you can gain by knowing his name and address. I get it with the medical records. If he says he was 68 pounds, I get where you're probably going. But I do want to hear it from you. Where are you going with the 68-pound fact that police registered with this case?
Well, the 68 pounds?
Yes.
The 68 pounds, well, I'm still waiting to see some records that are actually going to reflect that. I'm hoping to see that in the medical records, and we're going to dive into that. I mean, there's plenty of explanations, potential explanations as to why he was 68 pounds. What we're going to have at trial is testimony that he had access to food and water and was free to eat and drink every day. So we may not have to explain, we don't have to explain his weight. But there could be a number of explanations that I don't think people have looked into.
So, look, you're a smart lawyer, and you know how this works, right? If you can explain away one thing, you can't explain away a lot of things. By then, the jury starts to smell a rat. If you have to explain away a lot of things, including the 68 pounds, why there's locks on the doors inside the house, and I think one of the hardest things, other than the 68-pound fact that you're going to have to work with here, John, is the fact that he says there were straws that he had to affix out a window so that he could urinate in a bottle and get the urine to go out the house and down the side of the house because he had no toileting facilities. You're smiling as though that's a lie. Are you saying that that's a lie?
I've seen no evidence of that, and I cannot wait to cross-examine on that point.
Well, that's a great question. Do you expect to see him face-to-face?
Do I expect to see him face-to-face? If this goes to trial, absolutely. If this goes to trial, he has to take that stand. He could tell us all about how he engineered that, whatever he claims to have engineered. But I see no evidence of it. He had access to multiple bathrooms in the home, and I've seen no evidence to support that claim. So I look forward to hearing more about that at trial and cross-examining extensively on that.
Do you expect this to end up being more of a he said, she said? Because the evidence that is listed out from police and obviously in the prosecutor's case, and they haven't even listed it all yet. There's still more to come. That there were locks on the door in the upstairs room, and that there were no toileting facilities up there. So when you say he had access to bathrooms, plenty of bathrooms in the house, is this just that's because Kimberly says so, and he says something else?
It's a he said, she said. There are locks, but no one's going to testify that those locks were actually engaged to the best of my knowledge. I know of no one that's going to corroborate the claims that he's making. There will be corroboration to the testimony that we will put forward.
Well, yeah, I know one thing. You can't put locks on the outside of a child's door. That's a big no-no. And so that's going to be a tough row to hoe. Go ahead, quickly.
About that point, there were locks on multiple doors, and there's no testimony that those locks were engaged, and those locks were there before she ever moved in. We're going to pick that apart at trial.
Oh. And that's why I say you got a tough road to hoe, because you're having to explain away a lot of really what we call in the business bad facts, and you know that better than I. Hope you'll come back again. I always enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your reporting on this.
You bet. We'll continue to cover the case for sure. Giannis Kaloidis joining us live on the program tonight. Just ahead, a police chase Whew, by all accounts, it should not have happened. An officer appears to be trying to run a suspect down using his cruiser as a weapon. Trouble is, the suspect was on foot. After the break, the entire video, start to finish, and why the Baltimore Police Commissioner said he thought this was AI. It's all next. Everybody loves a good police chase, but I guarantee that you have never seen a chase like the one I'm about to show you. It is so off the chain that even Baltimore Police Commissioner thought that it was AI, and it's his department. It all started when a city cop confronts some guys on the street to ask them some questions, and apparently the chat did not go quite the way the cop wanted, so he jumps behind the wheel, and it sure as hell looks like he's trying to run down the suspect with his cruiser. Take a look.
What? Straight up. No, all right.
Yeah, what's your reason to stop me? You ain't even got no reason to stop him, bro. Hey, yo, walk off, Trey. You hit the alley, yo. Go ahead, Trey. Walk off, yo. He beating. He ain't even got no reason to stop him. Hey, yo, what the f***? You gonna hit him with the car? Yo, what the f***, bro? Yo, hell no, yo. Hey, yo. Come back this way, yo. Yo, beating, bro. That's his dumb. Dummy. Dumb. You dumb as. You dumb as. You crashing it all that. You really crashing out, bro. Go ahead, dumb. Really crashing out, bro. You crashed his car.
At some point in that entire scene that you just saw, the police car actually did hit the man, but only slightly. Got a banged up knee in all of this. But the officer behind the wheel may be in for much, much worse. His name is Robert Parks, and he's been on the force for 5 years. Baltimore PD says that he's been suspended and that an internal affairs investigation is underway. It's not out of the question that Officer Parks might end up in a fellow cop car, a cruiser, the back seat. Get what I'm saying? I can think of a handful of charges off the top of my head that he's probably discussing with his lawyer as we speak. I'm going to keep you posted on that one because, damn, Commish thought it was AI. Coming up, for most of us, Grandma's cookie recipe is safe and sound amid a stack of well-worn index cards. But some grannies don't pass on their recipes that way. Some grannies carve them into their tombstones. For real, it's a thing. After the break, a haunted tour through skeleton scones, graveyard ganache, and dead body brownies. It's goodies from the grave. Next on this Halloween night. We all have a great aunt or a quirky neighbor whom everybody invited to everything because she cooked or baked or fricasseed the one thing that everybody loved. And then she took that recipe to the grave with her. And that should be a crime. Am I right? But that is as close to a crime as this story is going to get tonight. I was today years old when I learned that taking one's recipes to the grave doesn't always mean that they're gone for good. They can, and sometimes are, passed on in a manner that couldn't be more fitting for Halloween. Etched into people's tombstones. Literally. Grandma's recipe for pound cake or popovers is right there on her headstone. It was Rosie Grant who taught me this. She's been scouring cemeteries across the country for years, not only collecting these timeless secrets, but testing them and tasting them too. And now she's put 40 of her favorites in a book called To Die For, a cookbook of Gravestone recipes. Rosie, happy freaking Halloween to you. This is just the craziest thing I've ever heard. First of all, how did I not know this was a thing? And do most people know it's a thing and I'm just the odd man out?
No, I honestly was there with you just a few years ago. I didn't even know it was a thing until I was interning at a cemetery myself, and they're pretty rare, finding recipes in gravestones.
Okay, well, thank you for telling me that, because I started to think that maybe I should be visiting my dead relatives more. So rare, how did you know that when you saw the first one, it wasn't just a one-off and that there'd be more, but certainly more enough to put in a cookbook?
Totally. Well, the first one I learned about, I truly thought was the first one. There's a woman named Naomi who's buried in Brooklyn, New York, and she has a spritz cookie recipe on her gravestone, and it was her special recipe that she would make during the holidays. And I thought, that is so cool. I've never even seen that before. I just thought it was the most unique idea. And, while researching Naomi, I learned there was a woman with fudge recipe and a woman with her Christmas cookies. And yeah, I could not be more shocked to be 40 recipes later, and that people are doing this. It's just the coolest idea.
So I saw Dr. Death's ranch. That was pretty ominous, whoever Dr. Death is, and decided to put it on his tombstone. What are some of the more bizarre recipes, and maybe ones that you made and thought, I wish I hadn't?
Personally, I actually really liked all of them. Usually if the recipe didn't turn out, it was because of me making them wrong. There's only so much space on a headstone for instructions. And I was a pretty amateur cook. I love baking and I love cooking, but some of the recipes I've just never made before. So in particular, Kay's fudge recipe, she's a woman buried in Utah. I made it and it was just like chocolate soup the first couple of times, just because I'd never made candy before. I had no idea what a fudge slab was. I didn't know what cooking something to the softball stage was. And so usually I would say it was on me if the recipe didn't work out. And so it's actually been working with the families that I learned of how to make the recipe correctly. And, some of these recipes, they had perfected it over the course of like 60 years. So I definitely still have a lot more work ahead of me to getting to closer to what they used to make.
Well, I love the one that, is Mima's recipe. And it always brings me back to like, how many Mimas ago were they doing this? And have you been able to trace this back to whomever started it? Somebody had to be the first, right, to start the trend, if it is even a trend yet. But any idea where it started and how old these things go back?
Not that old. I mean, all of these folks, for the most part, have grandkids that are still living and kids that are still remembering them and making their dishes. The oldest one is from the 1970s, which he's kind of an outlier. The average ones are from the 1990s and early 2000s. And so very recent memory. So it's a pretty new trend, if you can call it a trend. I do call them the big three because they were the first really big ones way before I came along, of Naomi with her spritz cookies, Kay with her fudge, and then Maxine Menster with her Christmas cookies. And the three of them had, decided to do this. They were really known in their families and in their communities for baking and cooking. They hosted all the holidays. And so it just seemed fitting when it came to creating their memorial marker to put their recipes onto it. And quite a lot of people had seen this. There were news articles about them. They were featured on Facebook posts. They were on the internet way before I came along. And so some of the families, as I've been interviewing them, were at some point, they had seen a photo of one of these three's gravestone and were inspired to do the same.
So I love it. I mean, I'm thinking that, back in the 1800s, this would have been a trend had the internet told everybody this is a trend, right? They would have all done it. But now here you are on television and it's going to go on digital. So I feel like it's just going to get traction. Is there a focus like in one particular area of the country that this happened, or is it everywhere? There's no rhyme or reason.
That's such a great question. I would definitely say it's a very North American trend. Particularly North American cemeteries are they're very personal. Like I've traveled now to quite a few cemeteries elsewhere, and I think burial practices are changing in different places. But at least in North America, whatever's important to you can end up on your gravestone or in a cemetery. I've walked through cemeteries that have seen inside jokes, movie quotes, your favorite beer represented, or your fishing rod, like whatever was your thing has ended up on people's gravestones. So cooking and home cooks, of course, it shouldn't be super shocking that food would be represented on a memorial. But I would think it's cool that these people took it a step further. And it's not just like she loved to cook or he was a good baker. It's literally the tools for people to do this themselves. And yes, to document that gravestone recipe. So I'm obsessed with this. I don't know if, outside of that, if it will continue, but we'll see.
Rosie Grant, it is called To Die For, a cookbook of gravestone recipes. Happy Halloween, sister, and thank you for bringing me this story, especially tonight.
Oh, happy Halloween. Thank you so much.
I am personally going to try Juanita's fried tomatoes myself. Hey, happy Halloween to all of you. Thank you for being here all week long, and particularly tonight. Enjoy all the booty that you pulled in from the kids. Don't eat it all. And if you do, tell Jimmy Kimmel about it. Stay tuned. Cuomo's next.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.